So yeah, my name's Mark Breguets. I'm the Program Manager for Environmental Compliance in the Barwon Southwest. Barwon Southwest region runs from effectively Point Lonsdale all the way through to the South Australian border. So we have quite a length of coast to manage. I run a small team of wildlife officers to manage the whole coastline, so a number of issues there. What I wanted to mainly talk about was some of the legislation that we use to protect wildlife on the beaches. Not a lot of people realise some of the penalties and the issues that penalties and offences that sit under the Wildlife Act. So I was just going to talk about that and a few other issues around seals and hooded plovers. So in Victoria, the main legislation that is used for the protection and management of wildlife is the Wildlife Act, and underneath that we have some wildlife regulations, and we also have some wildlife and marine mammal regulations, which were written mainly around protecting dolphins and whales, but also include seals. It's important to remember that all wildlife in Victoria is protected under law. That's everything. Crows that people hate, magpies, cockatoos, corellas, kangaroos, every bit of native wildlife to Australia is protected under the Victorian Wildlife Act whilst it's in Victoria. And it's protected against being taken from the wild. So you just can't go out to the local nest and grab a bird, or turn up a rock and grab a skink or a blue-tongued lizard or anything else. It's also protected against being unlawfully killed or destroyed. It is also protected against disturbance, and it is protected against being attacked, bitten, worried or chased by a dog on public land. All our coastline is public land. There is no private land on the coast. I might just add that the Wildlife Act applies to the whole of Victoria, not just dog beaches or non-dog beaches. It applies to your backyard, it applies to the roof cavity of your house, it applies to the whole of Victoria. Okay, now people may not be aware, but there's a place called Seal Rocks just down the road a bit at Phillip Island. Living on that little mound of rock just off the southern tip of Phillip Island, there's about 30,000 Australian fur seals. At this very moment, those Australian fur seals are giving birth to their next cohort of pups. But what that means is that last year's pups, the ones that are hanging on and struggling, they have now been kicked off mum, and they are off in the big wide world to fend for themselves. So what that means for us as local wildlife managers all the way along our coast is that we get seal pups turn up at a very regular occasions. Usually tired, usually very, very hungry, if not starved, and in desperate need of a rest, particularly after a big sea. So one day you can be walking down the beach and it'll be as clear as clear. The next day you could have anything up to 2 or 3 seal pups on your beach. Just depends on the seas, depends on where they are at the time. So they'll always turn up. We have seals turn up all year round, and I think I had a photo there before of a sub-Antarctic fur seal. We get a number of Antarctic species turn up on our beaches. We get subbies, we get leopard seals, we also get elephant seals from time to time. We also get some of the rarer sub-Antarctic species like crab eaters and Waddell seals and those sorts of things. But normally on our beaches you'll see an Australian fur seal or a New Zealand fur seal. Now, when a seal lands on the beach, what have you got to do? You must remain 30 metres away from that seal. Now, you're all going to say to me, what if there's only 20 metres of beach available and you want to walk past it? We're not going to stop people walking past it. We've got to be practical about this, but if there's more than 30 metres, you've got to remain 30 metres. If you stop and turn and approach that seal, you're putting yourself at risk of prosecution. So the rule is on land 30 metres. If the seal is on a boat ramp or a man-made structure like a pier, then you must remain 5 metres away. And if you have a dog with you and the seal is on land, regardless of the location, whether it's a man-made structure or a beach, then you must remain 50 metres away from the seal. You do not commit the offence if you are passing the seal and your dog is on a lead. It is also an offence to touch or feed a marine mammal. And you've probably all told me stories about how you've sat at a boat ramp and watched fishermen throw fish frames at seals, but certainly not advisable. Seals are an incredibly intelligent animal. They humanise very easily, and they then become problems for us to manage because seals can then become quite aggressive when they demand food. If anyone's ever seen the teeth in the seal's mouth, not dissimilar to a dog, in fact significantly larger. If you see a leopard seal, you can see canine teeth that can be anything up to about 2 to 3 inches long. So you don't want to get bitten by them. And the other great thing about a seal's mouth is effectively it's a salmonella farm. So if you do get bitten by a seal, I'd be getting straight down to the local doctor and getting your tetanus shots because you're putting yourself at serious risk. Okay, in relation to shorebirds, it's an offence under the Wildlife Act, as I said, to take or destroy wildlife. We have 2 categories of wildlife in Victoria. We have protected and threatened wildlife. Now, the famous hooded plover that you'll hear everyone talking about, hooded plovers are threatened wildlife in Victoria. They're also threatened under Commonwealth legislation as well, listed as critically endangered. So, in effect, a hooded plover, and I used this comparison the other day, is effectively the same as an African black rhinoceros. The only difference is one's a little sparrow about that big and the other one gets all the media attention. But under law, we treat a hooded plover here exactly the same as the Africans would treat a black rhinoceros. That's how critically endangered they are. Therefore, the penalty under the Victorian legislation, if you're found to be deliberately destroying a threatened species, then the penalty is $38,000 or 2 years in prison or both. Now that's a maximum, of course, but people just generally unaware that those sort of penalties are in the law. And as I said before, all these penalties apply to the beach, whether it's a dog beach or not. Okay, so what we recommend to do to be safe, if you're walking the beach, whether you're with a dog or without a dog, expect the unexpected. Wildlife can appear on beaches at any time. If you're unsure how your dog will react, keep it on a leash. I have seen perfectly well-behaved dogs suddenly get a sniff of a seal and just go feral. I don't know why they do it. It must be something about the smell of a seal. If you've ever been out near seal rocks, they can definitely vouch for the smell. But yeah, if you're not sure how your dog's going to react, keep it on a lead. And then just generally educate yourself about the marine and coastal environment. It's an incredible environment to learn about. Jeanette will tell you more about that later, but the things that rock up, and I'll talk about a few things shortly, it just amazes me. It never ceases to amaze me what can rock up on our shores. Please respect signs and temporary beach closures, and remember some species of wildlife are dangerous and can injure your dog. And I'll give you an example of some of those. So on the left we have a picture of a leopard seal. You can get a good idea of the teeth or the dentition there. We actually had a leopard seal down at Skeens Creek only last week, a healthy leopard seal. Normally the ones we get are quite hungry. This one was quite healthy. Luckily, a fairly remote area. Things like blue-ringed octopuses, some of the tentacled jellyfish can rock up at any time. They can still sting when they're in the tidal zone. Be very careful. And whether it's a result of climate change or not, I don't know, but we're starting to see the odd yellow-belly sea snake turn up on our beaches as well. So snakes just hunt for the bush. Sadly, they're part of the coastal environment as well. There's a typical weanling Australian fur seal pup, cute as chips, but please keep your distance from them. Remember, it's a privilege to have your dog on the beach, and we all have to share the beach with other beach users. Now, the other part of our role is that we actually have to assist with distressed or marine mammals, and we also have to deal with entangled whales and stranded whales and those sorts of things. So we've actually got a specialist unit at the Melbourne Zoo now that deals with the seals for us. So that's the AGL Marine Response Unit. They're part of Melbourne Zoo. So if you ring 1300 AGL MRU, then you'll get someone who can assist you with the inquiry that you might have or the report. They'll arrange for a vet or a volunteer to go out and assess the seal for us and take care of it. But if you get a whale or a dolphin turn up, let us know straight away. There's a few few issues around managing those sorts of things. So there's a 1300 number that goes straight through our state control centre, which is our fire control centre. So our organisation's all set up to manage fire, so they can let us know about that as soon as possible. And just to give you an idea of what can turn up, we've had 2 of these critters in the last 10 years around here. That's a sub-adult elephant seal. That one's down at Marlow. And I've actually stumbled across one of those myself, and when you walk around a corner and see one of them, it can be quite impressive. Those little marks on it, if you're wondering, are just cookie cutter shark bites. That's it. I'll be down the back afterwards if anyone wants to ask any questions.
Thank you very much, Mark.